Before Jaws invented the cinema blockbuster, before Close Encounters of the Third Kind proved Spielberg was just a one-hit wonder, Spielberg made his first theatrical film, and hardly anybody talks about it. But The Sugarland Express might actually be one of the most underrated movies he's ever done. So is Spielberg's new movie Disclosure Day coming out soon. We're going back and reviewing all of his films that I haven't covered yet. And today we're starting with his first theatrical release. Technically, his first film was Duel, which is made for TV, but The Sugarland Express is where he really steps into theatrical filmmaking, and you can feel that. What surprised me most about the movie is how small it feels. Even though this is a road trip movie with police cars, media coverage, and a growing statewide chase, it doesn't necessarily feel like a big spectacle. It almost feels like you're watching a stage play. The focus is entirely on the characters, the dialogue, and the relationships, and that's what keeps you invested from beginning to end. The story, which is based on a true event, follows a couple trying to reunite with their child, and in the process they end up on the run from the law. But what makes it interesting is how Spielberg frames them. They're criminals, but as the movie goes on, they start to become more like celebrities. The media starts covering them, crowds gather to watch them pass by, and they give them gifts, and they become these almost like legendary figures, which feels reminiscent of 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde. But there's also a bit of that offbeat, slightly absurd tone you later see in films like Raising Arizona, which makes the whole thing even more engaging. And one of the most interesting aspects of the film is the relationship they have with the cop who is escorting them, or at least forced to escort them. Over time, he starts to actually sympathize with them. He sort of gets Stockholm Syndrome. It's gradual and not over the top, which makes all the characters feel more human. Nobody in the movie feels one-dimensional, which is really impressive for such an early film in Spielberg's career. And there's Goldie Hawn, who was easily the stand-up performance. She absolutely carries the movie. Her performance is chaotic, emotional, funny, and desperate all at the same time. You completely understand her motivations, even when you don't agree with the decisions, and that's what makes her so compelling. Another thing I really liked is the dialogue. There are these little moments of humor sprinkled throughout. They aren't big gut punch lines, but just kind of natural character-based humor that just feels real and human. It helps balance out the tension and keeps the movie from ever feeling too heavy. You can already see Spielberg starting to figure out that balance of heart, tension, and humor that he would later master. This is also the first collaboration between Spielberg and John Williams, which is really cool to see in hindsight. The score may not be as iconic as his films like E.T. or Jaws or Indiana Jones, but you can feel the beginning of something special. It supports the emotion of the story without overpowering it. And I've got to talk about one specific scene because it really stood out to me. There's a moment where they're watching a Wile E Coyote and Roadrunner cartoon, and the movie does a really deliberate close-up on the man's face before fading to black. And I don't think that was random, because when you think about it, looking back at the entire film, kind of looking at the whole picture, it's basically a real-life version of a cartoon chase. They're constantly on the run, always one step ahead, just like the Roadrunner. But in the cartoons, Wile E Coyote never really faces consequences. Everything resets. But in this movie, in real life, that's not the case. That close-up feels like a quiet realization, especially for the husband, that he is the coyote. He's chasing something that is eventually going to fall apart. And the fade to black right after feels like Spielberg suddenly telling you that the fun, chaotic part of this journey is starting to come to an end. We are now entering the third act, and everything is going to go even worse. Overall, The Sugarland Express is a really strong follow-up to Duel, and a fantastic starting point for Spielberg's theatrical career. It may not be one of his most memorable films or one of his most iconic films. You can clearly see the foundation being built, with the character work, the tone, the storytelling, and from here his momentum only continues to grow. For me, it gets an A-, a 9 out of 10, and 4 out of 5 stars. If you enjoy Spielberg and you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth checking out.